It's the Brad and John Show.
It is the Brad and John Show. Today is the 20th of May, 2025. This is B block, Bravo block, which means we start right around 7:20. John, we didn't talk about this yesterday, but this bizarre situation with the Mexican sailing ship running into, what is that, the George Washington Bridge? Or is that the Brooklyn Bridge on the Hudson?
Yeah, I saw a headline that Mexico has declared war on the United States for this. What's this about, Brad?
Did you hear Chuck Schumer has blamed Trump for this? Have you heard this story?
No, I haven't seen the Schumer quotes.
Oh, my God. First off, he says that this is a failing of the Coast Guard because they're short-staffed because they have a hiring freeze put in place by Trump. And the interesting part of that is that the military branches do not have the hiring freeze. Matter of fact, if you've looked at what's happened to the recruiting numbers for the other services, the Army, Air Force, Marines, Navy, they've shot up quite a bit because you have Hegseth who's in charge, who a lot of people are going like, okay,
who's a real man. People want to go work for him.
Right. We like this guy. Let's join the services. Okay. And the crazy thing about this is that he's blaming the Coast Guard because a lot of people don't know this, but just like you have air traffic control at airports, there's a similar situation in busy ports where the Coast Guard sort of acts as like the air traffic control, and they guide the ships through the channels and stuff like that. The crazy thing on this is that this is people are going like, okay, didn't the captain of that Mexican sailing ship realize that his masts were taller than the bottom of the bridge? The problem is, this is almost like a deal what happened in the Baltimore harbor, where it's a sailing ship, but it has engines. And apparently they took off and were leaving, but the engines malfunctioned, so the current pushed the ship into the bridge and broke all the masts and unfortunately killed 2 cadets. Now, what was interesting for me was that, do you know we're the only major country in the world that does not have a sailing ship, a literally sailing ship to train our sailors on in the United States?
I did not know that, no.
Most of the other countries, and you're going like, okay, why do you need to have your Navy people, in our case, they're flying, they're on nuclear-powered submarines, nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. Why do we need to have our Navy personnel trained in running a sailing ship? Because it's sort of like basic training. I mean, the idea being is if you understand how a sailing ship works with sails and the whole bit, then you are much better at being a maritime person. Get what I'm saying?
I get exactly what you're saying. That's like foundational knowledge of the way a ship works, right?
Thank you, John. You synopsize things very well. Yes, that's exactly what it is. You understand the basics. It's like when you go for flight training, you don't strap into an F-18 out at Lambert to learn how to fly a plane. You fly a little Cessna 152 or a 172 or whatever the heck it is. Small little, single engine plane. Because of the fact that you can't be any closer to the mechanics of flying than being in a small aircraft like that. And to the point where you learn what the rudder does, what the ailerons do, all that kind of stuff. And because you see it out the window, you look at the window, you look at that wing, you see the flaps, you do the controls, you see the flaps move around, that kind of stuff. And I thought to myself, I never really thought about that. And why does the United States not have that? Because supposedly the Pentagon has said, we don't need that anymore. We've got our training. And matter of fact, we could call Mike Elam and he would tell us about how all he had to do was swim 200 yards and that's how he graduated from basic training. But the Chuck Schumer thing, I mean, can we get any more partisan than saying, oh, it was because Trump, that's the reason those Mexicans ran into our bridge? I mean, does it get any more ridiculous than that?
No, but I think, we see that from mainstream media too. And if there's going to be a pause in storm response, people are on the other side, fueled by the media and perpetuated by the media, by the mainstream media, will say, hey, we haven't seen a storm response in St. Louis because Trump is in charge of FEMA. And you know what Trump is doing to the government. And so any issue, Brad, if you just skim national headlines, everything can be blamed on DOGE, whether or not the job cuts have happened or not. It's from higher ed to storm response to the FAA, every disaster can be blamed on Trump.
Well, John, you mentioned something in your, and I have to be honest with you, when you in your top three, you talked about the FEMA people will be here tomorrow or Wednesday, or Thursday. Which did you say?
They're going to be here tomorrow, I believe.
Tomorrow, okay. I find that problematic. I mean, I would expect the FEMA people to be here on Saturday morning.
Yeah, I wouldn't. And you also think about the fact that through March and April, you've had a ton of storms throughout the country. You've had devastation and in terms of other major weather events. And FEMA only has so many people. So when a tornado strikes, even though you have standard operating procedure, those people aren't sitting at a desk in Virginia twiddling their thumbs, Brad.
Well, John, you mean to tell me, but see, here's all about optics.
I do mean to tell you that. Yeah.
Okay, you do mean to tell me that. But do you mean to tell me that...
I do mean to tell you that, Brad. Matter of fact, and once again, I do mean to tell you that.
There's not one guy from FEMA who could show up here on Saturday morning and essentially seek out a Post-Dispatch reporter, seek out a Channel 5 reporter, and he would go to find out, he would seek out a St. Louis Public PR, stlouispr.org, the St. Louis Public Radio reporter, but they don't work weekends. He would try to seek them out.
No, they do, but they're handing out yard signs.
No, they're at some event down in the Grove. That's where they're at, right? Okay. No, yeah. But come on. If it's the guy who fixes the copier, fly the guy in and put him in front of a microphone. Yeah, I'm Joe Smith. I'm here from FEMA, and we. Yeah.
So what you're saying is they should be focused on the symbolism and caring what people like Brad think, instead of like, hey, we can get meaningful help and assessors there on Wednesday. They should send someone to be performative and for symbolism's sake over the weekend.
You send in one guy, and see, it's interesting. Here it is Tuesday morning. I am getting text. I got a text from someone this morning I know who does not live here, and they were like, whoa, you had a tornado? And I go, yeah, it was on Friday. I mean, this has been national news, okay? So the crazy thing about this is, some people don't know about this kind of stuff. And even if you send in one guy from FEMA who's the copier boy or something like that, he looks around and goes, oh, my God, this is nasty. And he gets on the phone to his FEMA, overlords and says, you know what? This is not just your little tornado where it, got a couple double wides in Jefferson County. This is some nasty stuff. And bango, boingo, boingo. The next day, Sunday, a bunch of FEMA people are here. No?
Yeah, I think that, I think that's great, Brad. And which of the local areas that we've had a disaster in throughout the country, those people should just pack up and head here, right? I mean, we're splitting hairs over something. We're giving too much time to this. But you're right. FEMA should definitely send an errand boy to stand in front of microphones to make people happy and make them think that they're doing something.
Okay, couple light stories. I heard this yesterday, and I thought to myself, this can't be true. I heard this on the Armstrong and Getty show. You're too young, or maybe you saw it in reruns. Did you ever watch Gilligan's Island?
Oh, yeah, I remember Gilligan, yeah.
Okay, did you watch it as a young kid?
Yeah, I did.
Did you like the show?
I love the show.
Did you believe it was real?
No, of course not. It's not a reality show.
The story was that when Gilligan's Island was on network TV, on a weekly basis, the Coast Guard and other government agencies would have people, back in the day, they would write letters and sometimes send telegrams wanting to know why the Coast Guard wasn't out looking for the inhabitants of the minnow and why they weren't trying to find these people.
Well, I mean, that does speak to the intelligence of the national television audience, right?
I thought to myself, there's no way that's true. When they're talking about this yesterday, I go, that's got to be something I would say. That's just like, yeah, right, okay. Let me see if I can find it. I think did I screenshot it? Yeah, here it is. Okay, yes. The Coast Guard did receive numerous letters and messages, including telegrams regarding the castaways on Gilligan's Island. Viewers, deeply concerned about the fictional characters' well-being, sent messages asking for rescue efforts. These messages often question why a rescue hadn't been launched given the fictional castaways' distress. And matter of fact, it goes in the thing. It says, in the early 1960s, shortly after the premiere of Gilligan's Island, the Coast Guard began receiving messages from worried viewers. Telegram requests. These messages weren't just letters. Many were telegrams. Back in the day, it was expensive to send a telegram. And the Coast Guard actually forwarded some of these messages to Sherwood Schwartz, the show's creator.
Oh, what a shame. Think of what your life is like.
He did.
If you turn on the telly and you see a situation like that, and then you invest the time to write a letter.
Okay, next thing. This is a throwback to 7-Eleven stores. Do you remember this story? This is probably 10, 15, maybe even 20 years old. 7-Eleven stores in some areas had problems with vagrants and homeless people and just nasty people hanging out at their stores and not leaving, drug deals going on, stuff like that. Do you know how they fought that off, John?
No, I have no idea.
They installed speakers on the outside of the store and they played symphony music.
Ooh, no homeless people want to hear symphony music.
So now there's a story that some guy that owns like a neighborhood barbershop in L.A. is upset because of the fact that he's complained about the homeless people on his sidewalk in front of his store and his business has fallen off. So he put a speaker on the outside of his store and he's running a loop of Baby Shark. Baby shark, shark, shark,
oh,
shark.
Nice. Very good.
And the crazy thing about it is, I read this article. Somebody, one of the reporters went and interviewed the homeless people, and they're complaining, we can't sleep. That thing goes on and on all day and all night. We can't sleep. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe this is an easy fix for the homeless problem. You just, you're the city, so you got access to the utility poles. You just put up a bunch of these, digital, players, and you just put them in a loop, and you put a speaker up there, and you just turn it up to, like, if the volume goes to 10, you turn up the volume to 11, and you just run it, constantly. And they're not going to stick around. They're going to go, I don't like this. Now, if you put the right kind of music, that you might draw people, but if you put the wrong kind of music, I mean, in other words, you know what I'm saying? If you put like Symphony or Baby Shark, 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 you hear that?
Yeah, what's wrong with that? I think that's good. Now, here's the question. Did this gentleman get permission to play Baby Shark? Or since it's non-commercial, is he just clear to play it as much as he wants?
That's an interesting question, because now it's funny you bring that up, because ASCAP and CSAC and BMI probably, let's find out who this guy is. We'll send him a bill.
We'll send him an invoice
for royalties. That's a copyrighted song. We have to have the royalties for that. Okay, yesterday, also on Armstrong and Getty. You never listen to that show, do you?
No, I used to, at the beginning of when we started doing the show, I subscribed to their podcast, and I listen to them once in a while, yeah.
Joe Getty is a very brilliant man. I'm not saying Jack Armstrong's not, but they make a good pair, because Joe is obviously the very learned, book smart kind of guy, and Jack, there's a parallel between their show and our show. John is the smart guy. I'm the dumb guy that pushes the buttons and says goofy stuff, and John makes fun of me and stuff like that. Okay, yesterday Joe came up with 2 new parties for our political scene, okay?
Oh, what are they? What are their names?
The Angritarians, who are angry about...
I like that. Yeah, I want to join that party immediately.
Right. They're always angry about something. No matter what, they're angry about something. It reminds me of years ago, a friend of mine was a city council member in O'Fallon, and he said there's 2 groups of citizens that are most problematic. One of them is the NIMBYs, not in my backyard, that if anything, yep. And the other one were the CAVES, which stood for Citizens Against Virtually Everything. And the idea being is that the city has had a surplus of money, and they're going to send everybody in the city a $10,000 check. There would be people showing, we don't think that's right. We don't think you should be sending out $10,000 checks. But, sir, you're going to get one. I don't think that's right. I don't need $10,000. I think that's wrong. People complain about that.
That's right. I get it. Okay. So you have the Angritarians, and you have, what's the other party?
The FU-all-igans. The FU-all-igans.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The Angritarians, I got to watch what I say, and the FU-all-igans. The idea of being, those should be the 2 new parties which should come up and essentially, because it's funny. You got these people say, well, in Europe they do that. Well, okay, you could say, well, I had this discussion with somebody the other day, and you and I talked about this. Is England part of Europe, or it's not? Is that considered?
Well, geographically it is. It's not part of the European Union.
Right.
But geographically, of course, it's part of Europe.
Even though it's an island?
Yeah.
Okay. those people are going like, well, in Europe, okay, what do we have in a lot of these countries where there's 42 different political parties? There's like splinter party A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's what we need. We and the two ones would be the Angritarians, who are mad at everything, and the FU-all-igans, which essentially I think you can figure out what that's all about.
Which party would you join, Brad?
See, I'm the guy. I'm like a no party guy. Literally, I vote. I'll be honest with you, John.
I thought you didn't vote, Brad.
Well, I don't anymore, but I will. Okay. I will say something right now, which you will be shocked at. I'm
ready to be shocked.
I voted for someone in a primary, and I regret that to my dying day right now. And I'm not going to say who it is, but all I'm going to say is BGM. And M is magic.
Like, is that a person, or is that an emotion, or is that like a vegetable or a mineral or a person?
You talked about it recently. It's been on your top 3. Think about it. And BGM, M is magic. Okay, think about it, John.
Oh yeah, I see exactly what you're saying. You voted in a primary for Cori Bush, and you regret it.
John said it. I didn't. Okay, we have to take a break. We will be back. Hold on, I got to hit this real quick.